All right, let's talk Alabama Crimson Tide. Obviously, one of the more interesting teams to talk about this offseason with a massive transition from the legendary great Nick Saban into Kalen Deboer. Deboer, like we talked about before, has done an incredible job on the recruiting trail, but he's done more than that. He's come in and has decided to change the culture in Alabama. Look, not that there was anything wrong with Saban's culture. Obviously, it wasn't, but I think this is a sign that Deboer isn't trying to be Nick Saban. He's trying to be himself. He's trying to be authentic. And I think that's a great sign for the Crimson Tide. Let's pull up this report here, then we can talk about it more on the other side. This is courtesy of Outkick. All right, or from Outkick. Saban was known for his no-nonsense coaching style. No kidding. For 17 seasons, the Tide played joyless murder ball. It was all business all the time. But the culture is shifting, and on the latest episode of Next Up with Adam Brenneman, Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe pinpointed the exact moment he knew things would be different under DeBoer. I threw a really good deep ball down the field and a really good pass, and everyone was celebrating. I was looking at the sideline to get the next play and the next signal, Milrow said. I get done with my rep, and Coach DeBoer comes to me like, "Hey, what happened?" I look down, and he's like, "I thought you were celebrating running down the field." I was like, "Coach, I was just worried about the next play," Milrow recalled. He's like, "Well, I want you to celebrate. I want you to be excited. That was a really good pass." And I was like, "All right, this is different." That just changed my perspective. I was like, "All right, bet." All right. Again, this isn't an indictment of Kalen DeBoer or an indictment of Nick Saban. I think it's a great indication that the culture that DeBoer is bringing to Tuscaloosa is his own. It's his authentic leadership style. I think him implementing what he needs to do for him personally and his staff to win is critical for the Tide, not to try and be Nick Saban 2.0. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, Miles. But first, Alabama fans, in the comment section below, look, obviously, there's been a number of coaches, a number of great coaches in Alabama history. Obviously, two guys at the very top of the list. But we're going to ask you a challenging question. Who is the third greatest coach in Alabama Crimson Tide history? DeBoer is obviously trying to become that guy. But curious what you guys have to say. Give us the third greatest coach in Alabama Crimson Tide history and put them in the comment section below. But, Miles, what are your thoughts on Jalen Milroe's comments here involving Kalen DeBoer and everything on how it's going to affect the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, Nick, and I think when we look at coaching style and what potentially it was going to happen with Alabama, if somebody tried to replicate Nick Saban exactly, we look to another man who's always been very closely tied to Nick Saban, very close friend of his, Bill Belichick in the NFL, and we see what happens to his disciples that you would call them. They go off to other teams and try to replicate him exactly. We think of the Matt Patricias of the world, we think of the Josh McDaniels of the world who go out and really just try to be a carbon copy of Bill Belichick. It didn't work. People didn't respect them. They didn't come in and be their true, authentic selves. And it really just wasn't a great way to do things. I think that would be the same way as, if someone came in to try to be exactly like Nick Saban. It just doesn't work. You kind of got to do things your own way. I think Kalen DeBoer coming in here showing that he is not Nick Saban. He's not trying to be Nick Saban. He's a different guy. I think it's giving that spark back to this Alabama team. Now celebrating after a play, I mean, that's really not going to be the thing that takes you from, 9 wins to winning, some college football playoff. It's not going to be something that turns your season around. But I think it's showing, I think these are small little things we've seen happen. Kalen DeBoer has put into effect to cement that, hey, I'm not Nick Saban. Things are different. We're going to do it the way that I want to do it. And I think it's a good way. And I think this is just like, those small little things build up over time, over and over and over again. And it's like Milroe said, he's like, hey, okay, this is something completely new. This is a long line of things that I've been seeing that have changed. Things are different. And, I understand that now. And I think that's a good way for Coach DeBoer to be. Just be his true, authentic self. Like you said, be the guy that he wants to be. Because if you go out and you go try to replicate and be Nick Saban, it's not going to work. And he hasn't done that. And we've seen how successful he has been. I think this is true testament to what he's done so far. I think this is great news for Alabama.
Yeah, undoubtedly so, right? Because, and you brought up the Bill Belichick comp, which I think is absolutely perfect because the NFL, I think, has literally had a dozen coaches that have come from Belichick's tree in New England. They've gone on to be head coaches in their own right, and they've all stunk because, like you said, they've all tried to replicate and be Bill Belichick 2.0. And you really can't because, obviously, when you're dealing with the Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, it's almost impossible. In fact, it virtually is impossible to replicate a coach of that much greatness, right? There's a reason they're that great. If it was easy to replicate, everybody would. But here's the other thing: players, assistants, boosters, everyone in the athletic department, fans in the stadium, right? Fans watching the game on TV, we all can see it if you're not being your authentic self. It's going to look fake and no one's going to buy into your program. And in the end, you're going to lose and struggle. And I think that's the biggest indication that Deboer is headed on the right track. Because we all know, guys, we've all worked with people, right? Someone's, they're kind of one of your buddies or one of your colleagues. They get the big promotion and then they try and just change everything about themselves because they want to like fill in to be more managerial or whatever, something like that. And you're like, dude, stop, right? We know this isn't you. It looks fake. We're all laughing at you behind the scenes. You're embarrassing yourself, right? We've all seen that. We've all had different instances like that happen in our lives, either personally or professionally. And the fact of the matter is, if Kalen Deboer had come to Alabama, remember, 80% of this team has played for Nick Saban, right? So if he comes in and tries to be even just a little bit like Nick Saban, everybody's going to notice it. Everybody's going to see it. And all the players, assistant coaches, boosters, fans, water boys, you name it, are going to look at that and they're going to laugh and they're going to lose respect for Kalen DeBoer. If he had done that, he's obviously not. He's sticking to who he is, what got him here, his personality, his culture. You can like it, you can love it, you can think it's perfect, you can think it's terrible. Irregardless, it is a great sign for the future of Alabama that Kalen DeBoer is avoided the temptation to try and mimic Nick Saban and is instead sticking to himself, being authentic, implementing his culture down in Tuscaloosa. I think Crimson Tide fans, this is yet another sign that you should be excited for the future of this program.